Sandie Peggie, a nurse in Scotland, was suspended for misgendering someone in the women's room. Well, her case has made international headlines, and now we have some huge news to report. So, Billy, what can you tell us?
Yeah, this is kind of a wild story for a variety of reasons. This is a case that dates back to Christmas Eve back in 2022. It happened at Victoria Hospital, as you mentioned, in Scotland, where Peggy was in the bathroom and noticed that there was a male doctor in the restroom. So you imagine you're a female, you go in, there's a male doctor who identified as a trans individual, right? So it's a male doctor identifying as a woman and using the woman's restroom. This obviously left Peggy feeling very uncomfortable, and she then voiced that. And in voicing that, there was a formal complaint that was apparently filed by this, male transgender individual, and it had to do with misgendering and bullying. And this actually landed Peggy in a whole heap of trouble. She was essentially removed from her position while this was going on, but she's apparently been cleared now. There was insufficient evidence to support any of the allegations that were made against her, but this took 18 months. So you imagine you go to use a restroom, there's somebody of the other gender in it, you complain because you're uncomfortable. Then there's a complaint filed against you, and you find yourself, as a result of simply voicing your perspective of being uncomfortable, in a position of not being able to work and having to go a year and a half and go through this whole tribunal. So she was found apparently to be, not guilty, but I don't think the case is entirely, closed yet. So we'll have to continue monitoring it, but really bizarre.
So this is just my perspective. Billy, let me know if you see the same thing. I feel like, again, just from my vantage point, that this whole wave of, trying to criminalize quote unquote bullying, bigotry, whatever you want to call it, towards transgender people, I feel like that wave has kind of crested and is now sort of dissipating, in the sense that people are like, no, like, a man's a man, a woman's a woman. And that used to, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, woo, that statement would get you in some heat. But I feel like it's starting to cool down. Are you seeing that at all?
Yeah, I am. I think the fact that we're hearing more about these stories, right, where people are having this happen and people are expressing shock that, oh my goodness, somebody like Peggy went forward and shared that she was uncomfortable. Now she's being punished. I think because we're hearing about that more and people are so shocked by it, it's showing us that wave, there's been a turn, that people are recognizing the importance of making sure people feel safe. When you're talking about a restroom or showers or a changing room, these are places where women in particular deserve to feel safe. And the fact that we sort of got to a place where safety was no longer a concern, but people's feelings were the primary concern, I think people realize that is actually not appropriate. And so more people are speaking up about that and defending people like her in these sorts of proceedings.
And I think there's a lot of people that, would say, okay, well, you are so passionate about being scientifically accurate. This is a tangent, but this is something that gets, people in my sphere kind of riled up when people say something like a birthing person. They're like, you mean a mother? And so there's almost this pushback that I'm seeing. Maybe it's, circumstantial evidence on social media where it isn't as cut and dry as it used to be. I know I didn't prepare you for this, but you and I were talking before we got started about another case. We don't have to get into the details, about something that happened in America recently. What are some of the facts about that one?
Yeah, there's a pastor who is claiming that, in his part-time work, he worked for a library system. He's claiming that he was also let go because of misgendering. He was refusing to use preferred pronouns. We're hearing about these sorts of cases all the time where somebody says, hey, I'm not comfortable. Look, it's one thing to be abusive towards somebody and to malign them and harass them, if they identify as transgender. Then there's just simply saying, hey, you know what, I'll use your preferred name even, but I'm not going to use a preferred pronoun. Or you're doing whatever you're comfortable with and you're trying to respect the person and the truth, right? This was a case, from what we understand, where this person was in that category, this pastor, of just not wanting to, lie. He wanted to tell the truth. He didn't want to use a gender that he knew was not accurate. And this goes to what you were just saying, right? The birthing persons. We've suspended logic and truth for the sake of feelings. And that's never a good thing to do. You can weigh people's feelings and be kind to them while also telling the truth. And there's a way to accommodate these things. But yes, this pastor is claiming that he lost his job, and he is not the first person to claim this. There was another case last week about a manager of that business, where she was, let go purportedly because she, quote unquote, misgendered a person. So we're going to hear more and more of these cases as time goes on.
On CBN here, we talk about a lot of, let's just call it spicy political things, whether it's Israel, whether it's pro-life stuff, whether it's obviously this issue. And I love the fact that you're the one that's doing most of the explaining, so I can just kind of sit back and be the one asking the questions. But I feel like it's incumbent upon us to always, as we talk about all the time, to bring God into the equation, to have things from an eternal perspective. And I think we just got to start. I was thinking about, God, like, what's one verse that you would like us to read? And it's actually from Genesis 1. Ironically, I don't know if you remember this, Billy, but I want to say a few years ago, don't remember exactly when, but President Biden put out this statement about this issue, and he said, we're all created in the image of God. Do you remember this? And so he was quoting this verse, but I think what's interesting is if he would have just finished the verse, it would have said something a little bit contradictory to what he was saying. So verse 27 says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. So obviously we're not going to solve the whole issue today, but I think it's important for us just to open up the Word of God when we talk about spicy subjects like this. So Billy, you've done a lot of stories about this. How should we be processing this in a constructive biblical way?
Yeah, I think we always have to approach truth and love, right? And we have to have a balance of them. And I think what happens too often in these circumstances is we throw one out and we keep the other, right? So people who are saying, well, I'm going to show love at expense of the truth. I'm going to throw the truth out and I'm just going to do whatever that person wants me to do. I'm going to love them into a lie. And on the other side, it's only truth with no love. And sometimes they're too harsh and they're too rebuking and they're too, you have to have a balance. You don't compromise the truth and you don't have to compromise love. You can have those things together, but you have to expect that as culture secularizes, even though we are saying that more people are waking up to the truth of this, you're going to have more of these clashes that go on. I think as Americans, right, and also as Christians, as Americans, we have to defend people's freedom of speech, religious liberty, and that is incredibly important. And that is the baseline. It doesn't have to just be for Christians. It's for everybody, right? And so recognizing that by defending those values and doing that adequately, we're actually helping everybody in the process, right? Whether they're part of the LGBTQ community or whether they're Christians or Muslims, we have that First Amendment for a reason. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, praying through these circumstances, praying for the people involved on both sides for clarity and to have that balance of truth and love.
Absolutely. Well, Billy, thank you for your time, my friend.
Thank you.